Hello everyone and welcome to Hardcore Sports Talk. I'm Tommy Dreamer with my tag team partner, Captain Controversy, Orlando.
You're not going to like what I have to say today.
I know. Well, kind of want to switch things up. Usually intro the show. I wanted to intro the show. So I wanted to talk about something kind of personal, very personal to me, personal to you, a hot topic conversation, and that's concussions. Monday night, the wrestling world, and not just because I'm the wrestling guy, he's a pop culture icon. Daniel Bryan, at 34 years old, was forced to leave the professional wrestling industry due to concussions.
Which is scary. 34 years old, your career's over.
Correct. But again, hot topic, with the NFL and, the movie Concussions has all been brought to light. Myself, I'd be a hypocrite because I'm still wrestling. I've had a lot of concussions. But
do you approach things differently now, knowing you've had so many concussions?
Absolutely.
And that's the thing, where with the NFL, we're seeing these guys are going right back into things the same way, where you have coached me through my concussion. With each one, you kind of have to take life differently than you used to.
Correct. And, that's what I want to talk about. You recently have suffered a concussion. You felt the effects of it. My own wife, who was a former wrestler / beautiful girl in the corner of me. 2 years ago, she hit the back of her head in her second to last ever appearance in wrestling, and she still is feeling the effects of the concussion. With a lot of people don't realize, again, with concussions, I remember back when it was, hey, we get a concussion, you got to stay up for 24 hours.
Yep.
But now they recommend that you go to sleep, and they recommend that you get some rest to rest your brain.
It was a fear of falling asleep and not waking up, right?
Right, but you're also supposed to have, they would say you could go into a coma and all that stuff. You should have somebody check on you. The biggest part of having a concussion, here's your brain. Your brain is surrounded by water.
Yep.
If your brain is rattled enough, it jars. If it hits your skull, boom, you have a concussion. You look at all the precautions that the NFL's taken. The WWE has taken tons of precautions. Again, when I was wrestling, it was, hey, you take a steel chair shot to the head. You took it, and if you put your hands up, man, you weren't considered tough. Or you read about guys who played in the NFL, or, hey, man, I had to sit out, or how they were viewed by the other players. Oh, you're not, tough. Or, oh, I got my bell rung. But again, now we have all these tests. Daniel Bryan got a test. He wanted to be cleared. He was going out publicly, and he was saying, hey, if WWE doesn't clear me, I'm going to go quit and wrestle somewhere else, because that's how much he loves it. Then he realized, he went and they have, great, that technology's doing all this stuff, a brand new test, and they said, hey, your brain is not functioning properly enough, and if you continue to do this, you will be messed up. So he stepped aside.
Well, that's where finally we're seeing things change. The machismo aspect of it is falling by the wayside to common sense. I used to call some of these football players the P word and say, get back in there, wuss. You only hit your head a little bit. Now, after suffering a concussion of my own, I completely understand how necessary it is to rest and maybe not even get back in. And you're seeing players ratting on their teammates now, where before it would never happen. But now you're hearing accounts where players are like, no, he's hurt, you got to get him out of the game.
Exactly. And it's not, again, at the professional level where yourself, you've played sports and you've probably gotten your head rattled a few times playing sports. I'm good friends with Chris Nowinski, who's the head of the Concussion Institute, and he told me, and when I was there when he got his first concussion, and we were like, exactly, man, suck it up, blah, blah, blah. He wasn't acting right. When the best way to tell if, hey, something's wrong with you, and this is what I told you when you had your concussion, if you get a cut, you slice your hand open, oh, look, it's bleeding. Let me stop the bleeding. We can't tell when you have a concussion because there's no physical signs except for your behavior. That's why I said, hey, man, don't go out and drink, because if your behavior starts acting differently or you have different side effects where something's wrong with your health, that's when you need to go to the hospital because, hey, you have bleeding on the brain, and yes, you can die. That's the severity of these concussions. And you look at the hit in the Cincinnati Bengals player when he hit, what's his name, in the head, knocked him out. Come on, man. These are our concussions.
Let's ask producer Don.
Antonio Brown.
He got smacked. Well, I was just watching NFL film, Steve Largent. He got blasted, knocked out all his teeth, and he had to sit out, and his family like, oh, Daddy always got up. This 6 minutes on the field, because I was out. But this is, hey, we can't determine you have something wrong unless you go to the hospital. I know, again, with my own wife, she went and said, well, you don't have any bleeding on the brain, but they pinpointed, hey, look, this is exactly where you hit. It almost looks like a flash, a light on your skull. 2 days later from suffering her concussion, and again, she's a tough lady, plus she has to put up with me, so that's even tougher. And she's seen me naked, that's even worse. So, she comes in and tells me, she screams, and I'm running upstairs. She lost her hearing. She lost her hearing for 4 hours. And, I mean, deaf, and screaming and crying. And she thinks she's now, her brain is bleeding, she's going to die. Rush her to the hospital, and they said, well, the point of your head where you got hit, that affects your hearing, and it's a side effect. Hopefully it comes back. Thank God it did. She still, two years later, has side effects of that. Why I'm starting on this, not a rant or just trying to make people, Twitter, WWE announced early in the day that Daniel Bryan's retiring. A lot of people, oh, this is fake, this is a work, oh, he's going to make a comeback for WrestleMania.
His brain is bruised to the point of no return, beyond repair.
And he can't take those hits. When we're wrestling, or same with football, or same with hockey, we are driven to, especially in wrestling, get knocked down, get back up.
Yep.
In football, if you're a lineman, you sit there, hit, and then next play. In hockey, hey, you got to take a few hits. Thank gosh that they are making, changes to the games due to head concussions, because you have to.
It was the scariest thing I've ever dealt with, because 3 months later now, I still don't have my memory. I still don't have my speech back to where it was. We talked about Antonio Brown ourselves, I don't know how many times, but the fact that neither of us can go there, it was only a month ago. I spent a week on that Antonio Brown hit, and it's just scary to think that your motor functions will never be the same. 3 months later, I whacked my head once, and to this day, I'm having issues. I had no bleeding on the brain either, but the bruising alone is enough to really mess with you.
Correct, and thank goodness. I mean, you look at someone, you make your money with your mouth.
Yep.
If that was, you'd be out of a job. Thank goodness that you're not getting hit in the head for a living. There are a lot of players that continue.
Well, we don't know about the end of this show. You might punch me a few times.
Only when you start banging on the thing and or you start yelling at me for the Mets and all that stuff.
Body shots.
But to me, when people on Twitter, they're like, well, if WWE allowed Tommy Dreamer to come back, how can they allow Daniel Bryan? Why would they? And I was like, whoa, I'm sitting here on the couch. Why are you getting me involved in this? And I'm friends with Daniel Bryan. I'm really close friends with his wife. And I know she wants to have, children. I know they 34 years old, they want to have their life together. For me, when people were throwing me under the concussion bus, absolutely. But guess what? I passed all those tests. Or the best way for you, if you have a concussion or if you have something wrong, you go to the doctor, you know your own body. I know I said, hey, I can't take a choke slam, which is a move where a man grabs you by your throat and he pretty much spikes you like a football, because it hurts my neck.
You also wrestled on a limited schedule for a while and gradually eased your way back in.
Correct. And it's WWE has gone more to protect their athletes than the NFL. They have a stricter drug policy than the Olympics.
Right.
And the saddest part about all that is it's not real. It's predetermined. They don't have it in Hollywood. They have a drug testing policy. Hollywood doesn't have a drug testing policy. But again, they do this they're a publicly traded company, and they do it to protect their athletes.
Of course.
And then people are crapping all over the WWE for telling Daniel Bryan he can't wrestle anymore. Thank goodness that they're doing this.
Meanwhile, Roger Goodell says, we're concerned for player safety, and they're still talking about the idea of extending the season 2 games.
Well, again, they have zillions upon zillions of dollars, and the NFL is a huge corporation. And what happened with, the big difference between the NFL and there was a lawsuit. A lot of people went, and there was a cover-up. And now, because of that cover-up, hey, guess what? We're going to go out there, we're going to protect our players. Yes, you might have gotten caught, and yes, hey, but they sued, they lost, and a lot of money is going to help the players, which should be. WWE, that wasn't the case, but WWE has gone out and taken tons of precautions to help their athletes, and I'm happy for it. I think future generations are happy for it. Yes, you're not going to see as craziness as you used to, maybe occasionally, but again, it has to happen. not because of social media, because of the awareness for the athletes. And it has to happen across the board. You look at the disabled list in baseball. You now have a 7-day disabled list
Right.
for concussions as opposed to 15. And concussions suck. I remember I once got 3 in a week. And I got knocked out on a Friday. My bell rung the very next night after I wrestled. The very next week. And I remember after I wrestled, blah, 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 I went back. I woke up in a Wawa 3 hours later, still in my gear, still covered in blood. And I had no clue how I got there. I got in a car and drove around Philadelphia for 3 hours. I'll never get back.
This is why you defend the Wilpons and the Mets the way you do.
Wow. See, he's got to go that way. We're talking serious stuff here.
I do encourage anyone, though, that has gotten hit in the head, if you're not feeling right, if you're even just a little bit nauseous, get it checked out immediately.
And the best part about, again, talking with Chris Nowinski, he was like, hey, it wasn't just from my bad bump in WWE. He said, this happened when I started playing Pee Wee football. And this one, he was a big time football player. And he's Daniel Bryan. I got 3 concussions in my first year of wrestling and training and all that stuff. And it's not like, I remember my first concussion, first time I ever got knocked out in my backyard trying to catch a Frisbee, and I ran into a tree, unconscious. Second time, I got kicked off a horse and, again, knocked out. I was probably 10 years old. Thank goodness I didn't have any more after that, but they all start adding up. And then, where they're also doing studies, if you get concussions, it's kind of like what they used to call for boxers, they're punch drunk, because they get hit in the head all the time. But people, you cannot go out there, rip up the NFL, rip up hockey, rip up when they're making all these precautions, ripping up me for sitting at home because I've had concussions, but yet, again, I passed every test. And then you're also the same people who love UFC, or you're the same
Right.
people who love boxing, because guess what? Those are direct hits to your head.
The whole purpose of boxing is to cause your opponent brain damage. That's how you win a boxing match. Unless you're Floyd Mayweather, then you dance around to collect points. But your UFC boxing, the intent of the sport is to harm your opponent
Correct.
in the head.
Yep.
So, I completely agree with the hypocrisy. However, we do need to talk about a different type of hypocrisy going on in sports right now, involving the way the media treats different athletes, and that will be next on Hardcore Sports Talk. It is Tommy Dreamer in Orlando. We're back with Hardcore Sports Talk, the legendary Tommy Dreamer with myself, Orlando, and we're here to talk a little bit about what has been going on with Cam Newton. And I'm sorry, you cannot sit here, look me in the eye, and say that he's being treated the same way as anyone else in the league. He's being singled out. I don't like the guy. I don't like his antics, but you gotta call it fair. Cam Newton is getting vilified for the same exact behavior Peyton Manning exhibited just a couple of years ago when he was still on the Colts and lost to the Saints. Peyton Manning walked off that field and didn't even shake Drew Brees' hand. No one said boo. Cam Newton shows up at the press conference, gave answers nobody liked, and he is the biggest villain in the world.
Okay, I agree with his one statement is, if you don't like losing, what was his exact statement? If you don't like losing...
I've been on record to say I'm a sore loser. Who likes to lose? You show me a good loser, and I'm going to show you a loser. It's not a popularity contest. I'm here to win football games, and good for him.
I agree with that. I love the fact that he did not give it was a great game, I love my players, and yes. However, his first comments right after the game, to me, if you don't want to be there, or if I know you will get fined if you don't want to be part of the press conference.
Marshawn Lynch, I'm just here so I don't get fined.
Well, so then you make a lot of money, take the fine. If you're that pissed off, don't be there. When you are a public figure, and you and I have discussed this, you're a public figure, you now have to watch what you tweet, what you say, because you put yourself out there in the public. If you want to be a private citizen and do whatever you want to do in privacy of your own home, great. But then you can't be out there.
But you can't get treated they can't treat him any differently for doing the same things. Yeah, he put himself out there the same way Peyton did. Deion Sanders went on record saying, you're the face of the NFL now, you have to act different, and then he said something that infuriated me. Deion went on to say, the greats, Peyton Manning wouldn't do that, Tom Brady wouldn't do that. Tom Brady, who used to scream in the ref's ear because they made a call he didn't like, or Peyton Manning, who walked off the field without even shaking his opponent's hand. It's a flat-out lie. They're making Cam out to be something he's really not. He's a punk and he's a sore loser, but he's no different than anyone else.
I think if he went out there and said, hey, I got beat up. If you look at, again, UFC, boxing, they go, hey, he was the better man. That's all you have to say. That's all you have to do. And he did get beat up. The only time
He got his ass kicked.
anything wrong where a call should have been played when he almost got, there was a late hit in the end zone towards the end of the game, that should have been called. I think people enjoy the story of Peyton Manning. I do think that Peyton Manning was the poster boy for the NFL.
Of course.
And I feel that maybe sometimes calls may go his way as opposed to the other way.
Just
I
like
don't know if
Brady.
he's being singled out.
Cam Newton, he absolutely is. Let me ask you a question.
Yes.
Right now, if there was a report that HGH went to Cam Newton's wife's house, do you think the media would treat it the same way? Do you think they'd be like, yeah, you know what? Let's just wait till the game's over and then we'll figure out what happened. They'd be all over him, screaming up and down how he doesn't belong there, how he's a cheater and this and that. But it was Peyton Manning, so it was like, we'll just see what happens.
Stop banging on the desk. You're going to mess with our audio. I could probably see that. Probably because he's a little bit more boisterous. Probably because he talks trash. But when you talk trash or you want to talk that I'm the best in the game or all that stuff, you then have to win the biggest game of your career.
I
That's
absolutely
basically
agree.
it.
And I agree that people should take delight in the fact that a punk got humbled. But that's it. The way you talk about social media, the way people like Cam should shoot himself, they acted like this guy burnt their own house down. Okay, so he had a bad game and then he was a baby about it. Move on. The way people are treating it like they owe him something now. What will an apology from Cam Newton do? And to hear the people that are talking about how he needs to be a role model, Rob Lowe actually tweeted, Cam Newton is not a good role model for children. He's not sleeping with them.
Mm-hmm. Rob Lowe. Okay.
But this is what I'm talking about. Like the people that are jumping on the Cam Newton hate bandwagon, give me a break.
I'm not jumping on the hate bandwagon. I think a lot of people in our society want to see people fail. It's sad.
Of course.
And they want to see people, if Mike Tyson, baddest man on the planet, we all pretty much love Mike Tyson. They got all over him for whenever he would say something, whatever, but they basically, no, wait, Mike Tyson will still beat the crap out of you. Muhammad Ali, back in the day, he knew how everybody talked trash because Muhammad Ali talked trash. But once you start losing, or once you start losing in defeat, either physical or whatever sport you are, you cannot say you're the best and then all of a sudden lose.
Well, Ronda Rousey, the public cannot wait to piss all over her.
Yeah, but she's making movies and she's doing okay.
She's Patrick Swayze now.
Yes.
Look, but the fact of the matter is, as bad as it was that Cam Newton walked out there and acted like a jerk, and I'll admit he acted like a jerk, it should have been isolated. The way people carried on about it, they made it something it wasn't. A football player who has passion for the game, who gives a damn, had a bad performance and he was pissed off about it. That should have been the end of the story. He's a baby. He didn't act any different than tons of other football players, and it got swept under the rug.
My biggest problem, again, with media or people like us, we have an opinion here, people are listening to us, all those people, I myself, we both predicted the Panthers to win. Nobody ever goes back and goes on the air. It's like, oh, guess what? I was wrong on my prediction.
I predicted the Broncos.
Oh,
I
did
have
you?
the tape.
I'm sorry. Okay, I know I wanted the Panthers. However, then when I went and tweeted about who I wanted, I said, well, if you're going to go be a betting person, I would go with the Broncos. You really did say you wanted
I did, and
Wow.
I said it was going to be a defensive game. And I also said that the game was going to be managed by Peyton Manning. See, that's the other thing. Yes, everybody was rooting for Peyton. But then when he won, they were very quick to say, the general public was quick to say he didn't do anything in the game. It wasn't his game, it was the defense. Peyton Manning was a field general.
Correct.
Peyton Manning controlled that entire game. He ate up the clock. He knew when to pass the ball. He knew when to run the ball. Peyton Manning played an excellent game, but nobody wants to see it because he wasn't throwing 70-yard bombs down the field.
Well, again, that's what we like to see. We like to see touchdowns. If you look at a lot of people, hey, this is a boring game. It was a defensive battle, and I enjoyed the game.
I thought it was a great game.
Again, everybody has an opinion. Social media, I have 500,000 followers that they all tell me their opinion. I love the majority of them. Or even, like I said, Cam Newton, you went from could be the most beloved figure to the most hated. Pretty much you got to watch, that's old school wrestler promos 101.
Right.
You can't turn the people against you when, again, you're in that spotlight. You think about how much advertisers pay, $5 million for a 30-second spot. You think about how many people are watching. It's almost like a national holiday for everybody to watch. Everyone's talking about it. So if there's ever going to be a time when you got to watch your P's and Q's, guess what? That's when you have to do it.
He just wasn't ready. As much as the Carolina Panthers barked all year, the fact of the matter is they walked into that game unprepared to perform in the biggest spotlight.
I would say overconfidence.
You-
Everybody had the Panthers beating the Broncos, except for you. And then if you look, again, if you're a gambling person, then it pushed the line from 3 all the way up to
Yeah.
almost 6. So Vegas, as they always do, kind of, sometimes gets it.
Overconfidence, I'd say you have to be cocky walking into that stage. But I honestly believe that Cam froze. You saw right away, when Denver got the ball first, they were picking their defense apart, that very first drive. I mean, yeah, it only resulted in a field goal, but they controlled the ball for a decent amount of time. And you saw Cam walk on that field frazzled, like, okay, now what? And then when he got the ball knocked out of his hand and he didn't dive, I heard reports that said he didn't see the ball. No, he froze. When the chips were on the line, he froze. So I get it. Cam Newton failed in a big spot, and nobody is mad or more angry about it than Cam Newton.
And if he would have just went and said, I got beat up, I got outplayed, blah, 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 he would have then been, not vilified, it would have been like, wow, what a great athlete, what a great person. And I get it. If you're so, I've been so mad about a match that I knew I was supposed to lose, but it didn't go the way I planned, where I'm pacing back and forth, or my opponent, and I wanted to really fight the guy in the back. What did I do? I removed myself from the situation. I take a breather, blah, blah, and if they say, well, you got to go out now, I don't want to go out now. I'll take the fine.
Did you do that when you were 26? Because remember,
Yes.
he's 26.
Yes, I did.
All right, well, you might be smarter than him, even with all the concussions.
Well, thank you.
And I think that the guy is a jackass. But again, do you remember when Peyton got the snot kicked out of him by the Seahawks a couple of years ago?
Yes.
And that one reporter mentioned the word embarrassed. Peyton jumped down his throat screaming at the guy about being embarrassed because the guy used the word Peyton didn't like. He acted immature and childish. Nobody said boo.
Well, you're saying boo right now. I don't particularly remember that.
Nobody
But
listens to me.
If you were saying, hey, you got embarrassed of a game, I would take that and I would look, hey, buddy, how many Super Bowls have you been to? How many yards have you passed? I would get mad at that statement too.
The same could be, Cam Newton could say the same to other people. You don't know what it's like to lose a Super Bowl. You don't know what it's like to have everything at your fingertips and then drop it. The people that are screaming for Cam's head or talking about how immature he is or how he's not a good role model for children, they're not in his shoes, and a lot of them are hypocrites. Like Rob, to hear Rob Lowe say you're not a good role model for children could be the most hypocritical and offensive thing I've ever heard.
I would agree with you on that. But again, I would say the only problem I have with Cam is those sweatpants that he wore or jeans that he wore going to the Super Bowl. They were kind of, that and Joe Namath's fur coat were probably the two loudest things I've ever seen going into a Super Bowl. But again, when all the eyes are watching you, and I'm not saying you have to be politically correct. I am probably the most politically incorrect. My whole wrestling persona was against the grain.
You wore polka dots.
Yes, I still do. But you have to do things like that where, hey, I don't want to talk to you right now. Hey, you know who was the greatest? The coach. And you can't say the coach, Ron Rivera, wasn't he on the Bears who were 15-1?
Right.
He was a defensive guy. He talked to the lady right after the game. He was down, and guess what? He said, well, look what the Broncos did 2 years ago. They got their butts kicked. They came back and built a defense. That's what we kind of have to do. Pretty much is what he said. We have the foundation. Hey, I thought we were going to... And he was like, thank you for your time. Thank you. Bye. He was probably more pissed off than anyone because he put the whole plan together. But he carried himself great. And again, there is a way to have dignity in losing. And we as a society would have looked at somebody else to get mad at. Cam, all you had to do is come out there and say, hey, I lost. It sucks. I don't like losing. I will not lose again. That's it.
You're right. He didn't. It should have been shame on you, Cam, and move on.
And don't give me that someone's 26 years old, because we could talk about Johnny Manziel. We'll get into that maybe in the next break.
We will.
But don't talk when you have a city, a state, a nation rooting for you. There's tons of Carolina Panthers fans, and you have the world watching you. It's time to step up and abide by some rules. Or guess what?
He
don't play the
did.
game.
He attended the press conference. You just didn't like what he said.
I don't like what you say. Stop banging on the damn dashboard. There.
Tommy's going to ground me. When we get back, though, I want to talk about a picture, one snapshot that told the story that's most likely false. But again, this is the age we live in. It's next on Hardcore Sports Talk. It's Tommy Dreamer with Orlando. We're back with Hardcore Sports Talk. It is the legendary Tommy Dreamer with myself, Orlando, and we talk a lot about social media. And Tommy, he's the king of Twitter with 500,000 followers. But it can be one quick snapshot that changes the complexity of someone's opinion. And right now, there is a viral picture of Eli Manning. It's a still shot of him looking, some would call it angry, I call it just blank, while his family is celebrating his brother's late fourth quarter touchdown pass that pretty much cemented the game. And there are memes everywhere saying that moment when you realize you're no longer the favorite, that moment when you realize your brother's just as good as you, blah, blah, blah. And I do think that for the most part the public's taking it as a joke, but it is being used to kind of smear Eli a bit, where it's like you're jealous of your brother. And there's a lot more to it, and Eli kind of explained it, but again, one picture and the public's perception is Eli's jealous.
Correct. I find a lot of memes very, very funny. Even when I'm involved in them, there have been a few awesome Tommy Dreamer memes, and I don't think Eli is at all jealous of his brother. I think, yes, if you're a competitive family, but hey, if he was so mad or so jealous, he wouldn't be at the game.
Exactly.
He would be there with his father and all that stuff. Or you look at someone like a Billy Ripken, and you talk about, he didn't have the career that his brother had, but those are two great quarterbacks. And I just watched a story about Cal Ripken, and Billy, you could tell how much he loves his brother.
Sure.
And again, memes are just funny, and people want to do that. I usually think Eli has the same expression all the time, kind of that dead blank stare, like, hey, I'm happy, hey, I'm sad, hey, I just won the Super Bowl. So he kind of has that same look all the time, and again, they're funny, they're attractive. I don't like the grumpy cat ones. They usually kind of throw them everywhere. But, hey, that's what Instagram's for. You got to post pictures of your cats.
Eli Manning basically came out and said, while everybody was celebrating, I was thinking about whether or not they were going to go for two, how much time was left in the game, and you can see that on his face. These guys, and this is where the public needs to realize something, these guys don't think like we do. Eli Manning is probably one of the smartest football minds out there. I mean, he makes dumb plays on the field, but he can talk football better than you or I can anytime. I'd probably be able to read green eggs and ham faster than he can. But I don't think that you can get inside a guy like that guy's head. You just can't. While everybody's happy that Peyton scored, Eli's worried about, do they have enough time? He's thinking in football terms, and that's what the public doesn't get. These guys don't think like we do.
Exactly. He's an elite quarterback. He's also, I do think a part of him would love to be at that Super Bowl. I think a part of him would have loved to have Eli versus Peyton in the Super Bowl. Giants versus the Broncos.
I would not. Peyton spanks Eli every time.
I hear you, but you just got to think from that competitive nature. And man, that would be a ratings magnet the whole time. But again, it's the sign of our times. It's what we do. We like to look at a moment, take a picture of it off of our television, put it out there, and hey, then it becomes, this, that, and then controversy. Hey, it gives us something to talk about right now. But to me, it's total crap.
I mean, Super Bowl 50 basically raised a couple of questions. And the very first question was in the first 5 minutes of the game. In the NFL, before this 2016 season starts, the NFL needs to look the fans in the eye, look their players in the eye, and explain to them just what exactly a catch is. Because I thought Jericho Cotchery caught the ball.
Yep.
And
I agree.
I've seen that play called a catch many times. You can't have the inconsistency that the NFL had throughout the year. Just once and for all define what a catch is.
Well, yep, they're again making rules change every single year.
And then you wonder why fans are screaming that the refs are in someone's pocket.
Yep, but hey, we got replay or something. I couldn't believe about that play. It happens. I don't know what replay they were showing. There's, that's kind of like the Wizard of Oz, what he's determining.
Right.
We don't get that. I think maybe next year they're going to have to let us into that actual booth and have it determined, or maybe we have 3 judges sitting there determining what's going on. I don't know anything about that whole process, but yes, they will continue to make improvements for that because they have to.
They also need to be consistent with the fines and the suspensions. I get it that it was after a play, but when Odell Beckham Jr. speared Josh Norman, everyone was screaming, and Odell Beckham Jr. got a 1-game suspension and a fine. I didn't hear boo about Talib, who practically ripped the guy's head off.
Oh yeah,
It was the
down
most.
by the face.
I mean, come on.
But he was just grabbing at him.
Stop it. He got a 15. Please.
He yanked him down.
Yanked
by his face.
It was the most vicious hit since Larry Zonka.
Ooh, I don't know about that.
Come on. Tommy, he practically tore the guy's face off.
If you're gonna, I agree. Hey, he got penalized. I agree, 100%.
15 yards. It should be a fine and suspension.
I don't know about a suspension. I don't think about a fine, but it's again. We've talked about the stiff arm. The stiff
Guys have
arm,
got fined for less. Yes or no?
He got penalized. He got penalized, and they kept on driving on him. So I would say, yeah, they have. I don't think it was. I think it's, hey, I'm trying to stop this guy no matter what. Sometimes your hands go high. Hey, it happens. I don't think you should be fined for that.
I absolutely do.
Well, you and I usually disagree on most.
Because you have to be consistent. Guys have gotten fined for hitting a guy too low or hitting a guy too high, not being able to stop their momentum.
Late, or if it's again who they're. I believe there should be more consistency, but I don't know if that particular play should have been result in a fine or suspension. And guess what? How can you can't suspend him? It's the last game of the year. If you want to fine them, but then you're going to have
You
more,
suspend them into the next season.
You're going to have more regulation during a game, and then guys are going to be and then everyone's going to cry, well, it's not the same game. I agree, but that's why he got penalized. And then your coach has to ream you out and say, please don't do that again, because then we're going to lose the biggest game.
Probably the most blatant face mask in 25 years.
And then there's also face mask calls that never get called. It's the rules. It's the rules of the game. You look at back in the day when. I forgot who it was. He got horse collared down. They would have scored the touchdown and won. He got horse collared down in the Super Bowl. I want to say it was Dallas, and that was the only reason why they lost the game. And I watch a lot of NFL films. I got to start writing down these things. But you throw these topics. We don't have a script here. We have nothing.
We just roll. It's just 2 guys talking with concussions.
It was a horse collar. Now, if he would have done that, he would have gotten all those yards. Well, but it doesn't happen.
But see, the way the NFL works is they definitely rely, as they should, on the referees to police the game. You take a look at what's going on right now in the NHL. Hockey has always been a sport where the players police themselves, and throughout the last couple of years, hockey has been trying to get away from that. They've gotten away from the enforcer, away from the goon. The referees have been trying to police the ice themselves. You're seeing a lot more suspensions and a lot more fines. However, the Rangers are taking on the Flyers on Sunday, and it's going to be as old-fashioned of a hockey game as you can get because they flat out threatened Wayne Simmons. Wayne Simmons gave our captain, Ryan McDonough of the Rangers, a concussion. It was a sucker punch. Personally, to see your captain go down like a ton of bricks like that might have been the biggest disgrace possible, but that's a story for another day. The Rangers flat out said, we're coming after you. Do you agree that players, at least in hockey, should still police themselves?
I believe all players should police themselves, especially in you want to hit our guy. Okay, guess what? We're going to hit your guy, and that's going to happen. And then from the owners or for a league, that will sell some tickets. I look forward to that game, especially I love the Rangers. I love that old school type of hockey. It doesn't happen much, but when it does, and if you don't think if there's a deliberate hit or a deliberate attack on someone, if you don't think fines won't be levied. That's just how they have to play the game, and that's how then the NHL has to respond for that. And the NHL will probably jump on that because they've had some embarrassments after the All-Star game.
Sure.
So then that's what they have to do. You can't come to work and do a lot of things that you don't want to do. We have rules. You can't come to work drunk. You can't come to work and tell your boss, well, I don't want to go with this format. You can't, because that's why it's called work. And guess what? You got to find other place to work then. So, hey, that's what we do.
I mean, the way I look at it, the NHL has a chance right now to do the right thing. You want to levy the fines, that's fine, but step back, let these guys fight. Let them take care of the situation themselves. Wayne Simmons is a big boy. He knows he cracked McDonough in a sucker punch. He knows what's coming. He threw the punch knowing the league he played in. And I get it that it's softened in the last couple of years, but these guys have it. The NHL has a chance to finally let men be men.
I hear you, and thanks for negating the entire first segment of our entire conversation here, Captain Controversy, about concussions.
McDonough has a concussion, he won't be there. Now listen, I'm not saying I agree with concussions. After they fight and they get concussions, they should stay out a little bit. But this is a situation where Wayne Simmons went after one of their guys blatantly. You can't lay down. You have to fight back.
I agree. There's also times, hey, if you want to be, you can beat them up by beating them up like, again, the Seahawks and the Broncos. They beat the heck out of Peyton, and they won the Super Bowl. You can beat the heck out of guys, playing game, make their tongues hang out, outskate them, outscore them, and that's a different way of beating them.
Time and a place for that. The Mets had to do that against Chase Utley and the Dodgers after Utley broke Tejada's leg.
Correct.
They couldn't beat him. They couldn't risk putting a guy on base. You had Justin Turner on the Dodgers who killed the Mets. You couldn't make that risk. This is a game, middle of the season, where the Rangers, absolutely in the first period, you can go after Wayne Simmons.
Hey, there's old school in wrestling. Two guys enter a room, there's another guy standing by the door, and whoever's the last man out. That's kind of how we used to settle some things. If there was a problem, and again, in a predetermined sport, if there was an issue, and then, oh, guess what? You're the better man or whatever. Sometimes that could happen.
When we get back, we're going to ask our producer, Don, because in between these things, he's got his own opinion on things, and we figure, since Tommy and I are the two most opinionated people in the room, it might be nice to have a referee of our own.
You're opinionated. I kind of deal with both sides.
Yes, absolutely.
Stop banging on the desk. You're messing with our audio.
After I'm grounded and we come back, we're going to talk to our producer, Don.
Let's get pillow talk here. Let's get some pillows out here.
That is the creepiest thing that you've ever said. It's hardcore sports talk and pillows with Orlando and Tommy Dreamer. All right, we're back with Hardcore Sports Talk. It is Orlando with the legendary Tommy Dreamer. And the gentleman to Tommy's left is our producer, Don. Don is pretty much the mediator between the two of us off camera, but we figure it would be fun to have Don on camera. Your opinions on the things that we were talking about. First, we'll do the Cam Newton situation.
Well,
do you think yes or no he's being mistreated, or at least treated differently?
I think he brings it upon himself.
Okay.
I think that if you want to be great on the level of a Peyton Manning, you have to carry yourself a certain way. Even though Peyton Manning has been known to not carry himself with grace all the time. I don't want to say that because
when Peyton Manning walked off the field and didn't even shake Drew Brees' hand, that's about as disrespectful as you can get. There are still frames of Cam Newton with a big smile hugging Peyton Manning after the game.
You know, I only mildly remember that.
He had to call him. He had to call Drew Brees after the game to wish him a congratulations. He was so mad he stormed off the field.
Again, I think he makes a lot of this stuff up, too. I don't remember it.
No, because I actually did hear this story yesterday from another source. And at the time, I guess it wasn't widely reported.
Right, because he was Peyton Manning.
If it's true, absolutely, it's not the classiest thing in the world, but he's still.
And that's the thing. But you have a guy like Deion Sanders that says the greats never act this way, and that's just not true.
He still manned up after the game and did post game press conferences. And when he did it, he stood there with great posture. He looked people dead in the eyes. He answered their questions. And with Cam, he's sitting there with the hood on. He's slouched. He's not even looking at people. He's not making eye contact. He's giving them one-worded answers. It's about how you carry yourself. And if you're going to be the kind of guy that's going to celebrate in the end zone and rub it in teams' faces when you score, you got to also be the guy that owns it when you lose.
I get that, and I get that he acted childish, but there should be a limit as to how far it went. To be screaming about how the face of the NFL, he had a bad game and he had a bad incident. I mean, so do a lot of other guys. When are you finally going to be like, all right, enough, it's over?
But he had a bad game in the biggest game of his
did
career.
Peyton at times. So
I
did Brady.
understand that.
Belichick stormed off the field with 1 second left on the clock. No one said boo.
You have to have some dignity in losing if you are going to be. If you're a face of the franchise, you also got to think. A lot of the haters come from a lot of people who bet on Mr. Cam Newton and lost a lot of money on that, and they're pissed off that he didn't win.
That's not Cam's problem.
I get it, but you're talking about social media and all that stuff. There's a reason for everything, and if you have a bad game, or hey, if I got beat up from a dude, if I don't want to go out and shake his hand, I wouldn't do it. Me personally, and I'm like the ultimate baby face. I'd be like, man, I lost, I got beat up. Guess what? I want to fight you again. That's my competitive nature.
You don't think that Cam will be back? You don't think that next season he's going to be just as cocky?
He has to be.
He's got to change his cockiness. His cockiness obviously is part of the way he plays the game,
and the way the NFL made a lot of money.
Yeah, but I'm saying part of why he's successful is because of that cockiness.
Exactly. And if you want to talk about cockiness or you want to talk about players, we've discussed this before. You have to work within the confines of your work environment, or else guess what? You won't be in your work environment. Hello, Terrell Owens, who is he's not in the Hall of Fame. He has all the numbers, he's all that stuff.
He will
be, but hey, it's slap on the wrist. And he's also he still wants to play football, even though he's still officially retired.
He's 42 now.
I hear you, but he's still training. He's still waiting for that call.
I think every year that goes by, people take him less and less seriously.
Right,
exactly.
He starts sparking.
Now the thing with T.O., again, I completely disagree that he's not in the Hall of Fame. Hated T.O., especially being a Giants fan and living in Philly. Couldn't stand the guy. But the reason why T.O. is going to have to wait to get into the Hall of Fame is because of the way he treated the media. And yes, I get it. The media does play a big role in sports. But the bottom line is it should be judged solely and only solely on what you do on the field.
Absolutely. But guess what? That doesn't happen all the time. And when he was still...
And it should.
I just watched a whole thing about. There was only one quarterback that agreed to talk about him, and that was Steve Young. Every other quarterback that he played with said no. And if you think about, hey, Steve Young won a Super Bowl with him, but it's no one else wants to talk to him. His greatest, the guy Donovan McNabb should have spoken with about him, but no. So again, you got to kind of. I'm not saying conform to society. I'm not saying conform to, but same with Johnny Manziel. We haven't really talked about it. They tell you, hey, you shouldn't drink. You shouldn't go out there and smoke. We send you to rehab. We don't know. Forget about his domestic issue that's going on. And if that's the case, well, then he does need to grow up.
Right.
If you want to play, and if your boss tells you you can't, hey, you can't smoke pot. Hey, you can't go out and drink. Then don't do it. Because now you look at Johnny Manziel, who does have potential. Johnny Manziel could have basically easily got kicked off Cleveland, been a backup for Peyton Manning if he decides to play one more year, and given the opportunity, maybe be the backup for Brock Osweiler.
I think he's going to go to Dallas.
I think he's going to be out of football.
Johnny Manziel?
Yeah.
No, Dallas already came out publicly and said the other day that they have no interest in Johnny.
I think he'll be out of football.
Cut any kind of interest after the incident.
Absolutely, but has Dallas ever said anything and then gone back on it the next day? All the time.
Yeah, but I think with this situation it's a little different, and I do think that now you're starting to hear whispers about the word mental illness, and he really does have a problem. I think the Cleveland Browns publicly came out on Twitter yesterday or the day before saying that if he needs help, they're there for him to help him.
I think the mental illness thing is a load of crap. I think it's just another way to paint Johnny Manziel in a certain light. Listen, I'm not saying the guy doesn't have a problem. The guy has a problem. I'm not even saying he's not an a-hole, because he is. But he's no different than tons of other guys in that league. They just don't get the press that Johnny does. Nobody is in Johnny's living room filming him singing a rap song and then screaming about it. How dare he, because he had a Four Loko in his apartment. In his apartment.
I think what started out as spoiled brat syndrome with Johnny Manziel has developed into a problem.
Correct. I agree. And, it's, again, I am a proponent of, hey, you are the Cleveland Browns. If he would have played his cards right, look at Bernie Kosar, who he has had some alcohol issues.
Yeah.
I know he was even on the air once where they had to remove him because he was a little bit...
Is Bernie Kosar mentally ill?
No.
Is Joe Namath mentally ill? Is Randy Moss mentally ill?
No.
So why is Johnny Manziel mentally ill?
I agree
because
with that.
If Joe Namath was around today, he would be mentally ill.
See how he is? And he's yelling at us?
I would say based on multiple incidents this season.
Based on media creation.
Could be.
The fact that the guy has been given every
Opportunity.
possible chance.
And he's not the only one, but nobody says anything about those other guys.
Yeah, but last week it was taken a different level where reports came out that he beat his girlfriend and he had her trapped for a couple of hours.
Is Adrian Peterson mentally ill? Who bruised his he had kicked out of football? They let him back with open arms. Vikings made a big scene. Oh, we got to cut him. We won't tolerate that. Then they let him right back on the team.
I think guys like Adrian Peterson he has a second chance now.
But you don't hear the word mental illness with them.
If it was continued with Adrian Peterson or it became child abuse issues, all that stuff, I do feel. But again,
it was the only time he was caught.
I hear you. But
if
that
he
also
continued
goes
to get caught 2 or 3 more times, there'd be no. After the second time, he'd be done.
The thing, I'm going to separate Johnny Manziel and his girlfriend because that's pending. Mm-hmm. And until we know more, and you know the way I do not trust the media, we'll set that aside. Just talking about the drinking and things like that, that compared to anything that other guys have done that have gotten second, third, fourth chances, it's ridiculous. Johnny Manziel is a D-wad, but the way he's painted, he's the villain when in a sea of villains.
Yeah, no, I don't disagree with you there, but I do know that it's like what I first said. What started out as a guy being a spoiled brat. He was entitled. He felt like he was the greatest because most of the people in his corner were telling him he was the greatest. He was Johnny Football.
He also had some situations that were completely unfair, like not being able to sell his own name, not being able to make money on his own likeness.
Yeah, but he felt entitled in an arena where everybody else was in the same boat. In college football, no one can make money on that.
No one was making the money that he was, though, or the offers.
But college football and playing college and paying players, that's a whole other issue that we could talk for hours about.
But that's the thing. It wasn't that he didn't feel the rules didn't apply to him. It's that until that moment, it didn't really matter because the money you were talking about wasn't as substantial as it was for him.
Okay.
He actually shed light on a question that should be asked a lot more.
He could go on any website, trademark whatever he wants to do, and he don't have to sell it right away. And he could go out there and make money off of whatever he does, whatever name he wants, if he then, 1, sticks by the rules, 2, plays the game and wins. Cleveland has been begging for a winner to step up. They thought they had him in him. Again, you want to be a franchise quarterback. You want to be a quarterback of a team who's supposed to be the leader. You have to. And I don't care about your age because you're being groomed from this from college that you need to step up and lead men, which then makes a city. You become beloved, which means which means everybody again. And you could lose. You could go 3-10. But hey, if you play tough, blah blah blah, you'll be back next year. But again, you don't want to have all these against you, problems or drinking.
But what you said doesn't apply to everyone. It doesn't. There are athletes out there that get away with murder, and you know it.
No one's getting away with murder anymore. That has been proven. We're talking specific murder, though, right?
I'm not talking about OJ, personally. Okay. I mean, yes, he's in jail, but it was for robbing
Great
somebody.
show on FX, by the way.
He's up for parole in a couple months.
Correct.
He is. What do you think?
I kind of feel bad for him at this point, even though he's definitely a murderer. It came out last week that the guy, the doctor that the movie Concussion is based on, he believes wholeheartedly that O.J. Simpson has CTE and probably had it at the time that he committed the murder.
Now, you want to talk about mentally ill? I'll agree that O.J. is mentally ill.
Yeah, well, you're mentally ill if you get away with murder and then you go to rob somebody of your memorabilia years later. Just at that point, what are you doing? Why are you not like a hermit on some tropical island somewhere?
Correct. My whole thing with CTE too. I think everybody probably will have some sort of CTE. I think it's a big issue, especially with athletes. Every athlete's going to have it. Every athlete. There's not going to be one athlete that does not have it. So I don't want to use that as a crutch. I don't. That's your personality. That's your hey. There's right or there's wrong. You don't go out and kill. You don't go out and steal. Can you? Yes, but then you get caught and you got to face the consequences. And you can't use, well, I have CTE or I'm crazy. You just have to abide by laws of society or else then you will be in jail. And for, again, Johnny Manziel, if we're talking about all his conduct off the field, that's one thing. But then if we have this, police investigation, we're not talking about it yet because we don't know what's going on. But if he's found guilty, goodbye, you're out of football.
I absolutely agree.
And you're a waste of talent when you have, and those situations, you have all your boys, because trust me, I've seen it. You have all your boys going to strip clubs, go that. Half these guys are your paid friends, and they will be the same people who are gone once you're no longer famous or once you're no longer the head of a team. But if you, again, follow the rules, you will have people who you're beloved for the rest of your career. I know myself. I could go to Philadelphia. I could go to so many towns, and it's just like, oh, wow, it's Tommy Dreamer, and I am beloved. Why am I beloved? Because I always, and again, in a premature, I got to stop saying again, in a premeditated formula of, hey, wins or losses, they don't really count, but they know I went out there and worked hard. We had talked about it last week. I don't go to a strip club, 1, because I'm married, 2, because I have 2 daughters. I won't walk into a strip club even if my friends want me to go.
3, because you're dirt cheap and you won't spend $1 on a woman's G-string.
Correct. But I won't do that. You know why? Because I don't want someone taking a picture, blah, blah, blah. Or if I go and tell my wife, hey, guess what? I'm going to go back to my room and go to bed. And then, there's a picture that surfaces of me out at a strip club. Can I go to a strip club? Absolutely not. I also don't want to go if it's a shady place where I'm going to get involved into a fight, or there's alcohol, or you get these people who are challenging, wrestling's fake, or all that stuff. You get it all the time. You just remove yourself from the situation. If I was single, again, I could do whatever I want to do, but then I have to deal with the consequences later. So that's why I remove myself from those situations, or remove myself from shady individuals, except for you.
I agree
I come
with
here
you.
every week.
If it comes out that Manziel has assaulted his girlfriend, that's it. However, let me ask you this. At that point, does the NFL then go back and suspend and get rid of everybody with domestic charges? Because there are guys playing in the NFL right now with domestic charges, with murder charges.
Well,
who's got a murder charge that's playing right now?
Not now. What's his name?
Ray Lewis.
Not Ray Lewis.
Ray Caruth.
I don't want to say the wrong name because we're live. He did 30 days in jail. He was on the Browns. He killed somebody in a car. He was drunk.
We don't remember.
Stallworth.
Yeah, Dante Stallworth. Yeah, that was at the tip of my tongue.
They got second chances. Do you see what I'm saying?
Did Stallworth get a second?
Yeah,
chance?
he came back.
I vaguely remember that. It was already a couple years ago.
But do you see what I'm saying about how this is why I'm so against the way Manziel's treated? I don't like Johnny Manziel. I just think that the NFL is full of crap. And so are a lot of people.
I think if you were given all the chances that he was given, and it's like, when do you finally give up on somebody? You have to give up on somebody. And if he then shows that he's turned his life around and all that is good, then yes, you do get
until he
chance.
kills somebody or it's proven that he beat his girlfriend, then no, he has not gotten as many chances as other people.
There were some shady circumstances around what happened with his girlfriend. At first, she wasn't cooperative with the police, even though she called them down there. Apparently, they were asking her to have her injuries photographed, and she refused. And there were other questions that she wasn't giving them answers on, straight up answers. She was just basically telling them what she wanted to tell them.
And there's also, again, sign of the times. You look at Ray Rice, when we witnessed that via our cell phone, TMZ, blah, 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 straight up punching a girl. And I have been in situations where girls have attacked me, or girls have been like, oh, this. And I, right away, you got to put your hands up. Right. I've had a girl once come at me with a knife, and I had to quickly disarm her with that knife, throttle her by the neck, and be like, what are you doing to get rid of that knife? And then guess what? If that was caught on tape and you see me like this with a girl, I'm guilty.
But should you be, is my point.
No, I should not be. But
people need to stop forming opinions before we have the full
story.
But
if I have a whole history of a lot of this stuff, or if I have a history of this going on, then guess what? Maybe
the only history we have is what the media is telling us.
I hear you, but how many times have they told us, or how many times do we have an incident? Hey, he had to go to rehab. We don't know why he went to rehab.
Why did they tell us? Because they want the damn ratings, not because they have any interest in the story.
Well, there's no doubt that the NFL and a lot of pro sports organizations are hypocritical when it comes to these kind of things. You have your star players, and certainly they might get a little better treatment. Right. Both from the media and from the league. Back to my point about the whole story surrounding this discrepancy with Manziel's girlfriend. no police report was official. No, charges weren't officially filed.
Right.
So he was never convicted of anything. Based on the antics alone, though, that's when the Cleveland Browns took action and decided they were going to cut ties with him. Now, they couldn't officially cut ties with him contractually, so they
Right.
put out a blanket tweet statement being very vague about the situation, that they were going to reevaluate the situation with Manziel come the start of free agency.
Johnny Manziel is probably not going to suit up in a Browns uniform again.
I think it's sad. I don't mean to cut you off. I think it's sad that the NFL actually has to have a rule about domestic violence, because no man should hit a woman, but that they actually have a rule in place because of how many times that did happen.
Well, it's more because of the contract. It's
I
because,
get it, but think about that. That wasn't back in the day. I again, watch Nate Newton. He beat up his wife all the time, and then she finally came about it. If there's a woman being beaten by a man, she should go. And again, every situation is different. We don't know about this situation, but if you want to play at a top level or be an athlete, you have to follow somewhat rules.
I agree.
Just like you have to follow rules of society. I'm hungry. I have no money. If I go steal food, guess what? But I wanted food. That's why I went and robbed that place.
My only point is make the rules the same for everyone.
I
And not
agree.
just the rules.
Stop
make the
banging.
media coverage the same for everyone.
For a sport like the NFL, it's a hard standard to live up to. Tommy, you can probably speak to this better than either me or Orlando. The fact that you're playing in a sport where it requires for you to have a certain level of aggression, meanness, energy, and some guys, they can turn that off when the game's over, but other guys,
Correct. It's hard.
they bring that home with them.
And again, I got to stop saying again, but if we're all getting I say again when I get passionate, he starts banging on the thing. When you're at that level, and if you have any sort of vice, I know myself, I could go out there. I have gone to clubs, bars, strip clubs. Hey, you want cocaine? Hey, you want drinks? Hey, you want this? Anything that you want, even in 2016. Or for me, fans would bring it to the arenas. And hey, you want this? No, I don't. That was my choice. If I had that vice, or if I was an addict, or yeah, man, I'll take it. I know people offer me drinks. I say, sure, I don't drink, but I gave it to my friends, that drink. I never liked drinking. I never did drugs. That's, again, just me.
Just because you were too cheap.
No, not because I'm too cheap. But you can't be a part of that. You can't do it. Especially if you're going to be the quarterback of a team.
I agree.
Okay.
I agree.
I'm going to change you from not Captain Controversy, maybe Captain Conspiracy Theory. And if Fox, if you're listening, the X-Files is back. I think we have a new Mulder, because he is always searching for
The
that
government shot
outlet.
JFK.
Oh, man.
I just threw that out there. Anyway, our
was the
producer,
mafia.
Don, a very thanks for you to join us.
Orlando, I can't thank you enough. It's both of you guys. It's truly a pleasure to be here. It's
Thank
an
you for
honor.
dealing with us, especially him. I know I'm the educated one. He's the angry one. It should be the other way around.
No,
right?
I absolutely.
My tag's the innovator of violence, and yet he's the one always screaming at me.
No, it was fun. It was as fun as I thought it was.
Thank you for being our live studio audience of one, but it's growing.
It is Hardcore Sports Talk. It's Tommy Dreamer, myself, and our producer, Don. We'll see you next time. We'll see you next time. We'll see you next time.